The man accused of killing a pregnant 17-year-old made his first court appearance just a short time ago.
Prosecutors say Jariah Edwards' ex-boyfriend, 21-year-old Trevon Williams, showed up at her family's vacation rental in Bay Park Saturday night and shot her.
It is just past 1 in the morning on May 30th, and a 17-year-old girl is standing in the front yard of a rental house on Gardena Avenue in San Diego, looking at a delivery she did not order. Flowers, a vase, gifts that, on any other night, in any other life, might have meant something romantic. Tonight they mean something else entirely. Tonight they are bait. And in less than 60 seconds, this 17-year-old girl, 8 months pregnant, on what was supposed to be a relaxing family vacation, will be lying on the grass with a gunshot wound to the head while her unborn daughter fights for a life that has not even started yet. Her name was Jariah Edwards. By the time this story is over, you will know exactly how she ended up in that yard, exactly who put her there, and exactly how far prosecutors say he was willing to go to make sure she never left him. This is not a story about a fight that got out of hand. According to the San Diego District Attorney's Office, this is a story about a plan built days in advance, executed with takeout apps as the delivery mechanism for a bullet. Before any of this happened, Jariah Edwards was just a teenager from Phoenix, Arizona, doing what teenagers do, except she was doing it while carrying a child. Those who knew her describe a young woman who was, in the words of her aunt, one of the sweetest people you could meet, and not in the way people perform niceness for cameras after a tragedy. Friends who grew up around her say she had the kind of personality that made people feel like they mattered. She was funny. She was sarcastic in the way that made you laugh instead of wince. She made people feel seen. By the spring of 2026, Jariah was 8 months pregnant. According to her family, the pregnancy had become a turning point for her, not a burden. She had a daughter on the way, and that fact reorganized everything in her life around a single goal, becoming the kind of mother her daughter would be proud of. Her aunt put it simply, Jariah had only recently begun to grow into who she was supposed to be, and that growth was happening in real time, in front of the people who loved her. That is the version of Jariah that existed before Trevon Williams entered the picture in any serious way. According to the San Diego District Attorney's Office, Jariah and Williams, 21 and also from Phoenix, began dating in September of 2025. Prosecutors have since described the relationship in court as on and off and marked by domestic violence, including alleged threats directed not just at Jariah, but at the unborn child she was carrying. This was not, by the account given in court, a relationship with a single bad night. It was a pattern, one that built over months rather than appearing all at once. Friends close to Jariah told reporters they had watched her change over the course of the relationship. One friend, speaking to investigators, described how Jariah would have to stay on the phone with Williams constantly, how her energy would shift the moment he was involved, how she stopped being the same person whenever they got together. That is not a small detail. That is a description of someone watching another person's personality get rearranged by fear. The people around Jariah did not sit back and watch quietly. At least one close friend sat her down just 1 week before the shooting and had a direct conversation about Williams, about the pattern they were seeing, about the need to find a way out. That conversation was not hypothetical. According to prosecutors, Jariah herself had been actively planning to file a restraining order against Williams in the period before she was killed. She was not confused about the danger. She was taking concrete legal steps to protect herself and her daughter. This detail matters enormously, and it is worth sitting with for a second. A restraining order is not something people pursue casually. It requires acknowledging, often to a courtroom, that you believe a specific person poses a threat to your safety. Jariah Edwards had reached that point. She understood what she was dealing with, and she was doing something about it through the system that exists for exactly this purpose. The tragedy is not that she failed to recognize the danger. The tragedy is that the system did not move faster than the danger did. According to court documents cited by prosecutors, Williams did not drive himself to San Diego. He hired a Lyft. He left Phoenix on the evening of May 29th, around 6 p.m., and arrived in San Diego just before 11:30 that night. That is roughly 5.5 hours in the back of a rideshare vehicle, crossing an entire state line, to reach a city where his ex-girlfriend happened to be on vacation with her family. Prosecutors allege Williams knew exactly where Jariah was staying. a short-term rental on Gardena Avenue in San Diego's Bay Park neighborhood, the kind of property families book on sites like Airbnb for a weekend getaway. According to Deputy District Attorney Alex Lawrence, Williams had the rideshare driver drop him off several houses away from the rental rather than directly in front of it. That is not the behavior of someone showing up on impulse to patch things up. That is the behavior of someone trying not to be seen arriving. He then waited. This is the part of the story that separates it from so many other domestic violence tragedies that make the news. Williams did not simply knock on the door. He did not call her to come outside. According to prosecutors, he allegedly used DoorDash, the food and goods delivery app, as a tool to manufacture a reason for Jariah to step outside alone. The first delivery he arranged was flowers, sent to the rental house. When Jariah went outside to retrieve them, she did not go alone. A family member came out with her. Williams, prosecutors say, stayed hidden, watching, waiting for an opportunity where she would be by herself. It did not come yet, so he tried again. According to the district attorney's account, Williams arranged a second DoorDash delivery, this time a vase, specifically designed to draw Jariah back outside, and this time, alone. It worked. Just after 1 a.m, Jariah Edwards stepped out of that rental house by herself to retrieve a vase that had been ordered as a lure. Williams, prosecutors allege, had positioned himself outside the property and waited for exactly this moment, for her to be alone, for the family inside to no longer be watching, for the one window where he could act without witnesses standing beside her. He shot her in the head. San Diego Police Dispatch began receiving multiple 911 calls around 1:10 a.m. reporting a shooting on the 4900 block of Gardena Avenue. Officers arrived within minutes and found Jariah unresponsive on the ground, suffering from a gunshot wound to the head. She was rushed to a hospital. The medical team that received her was confronting two emergencies stacked on top of each other: a 17-year-old patient with a traumatic head wound, and a 32-week-old fetus whose only chance at survival depended on doctors moving fast enough to deliver before it was too late. They performed an emergency cesarean section. Jariah's daughter was delivered in the middle of this crisis, pulled into the world in an operating room rather than a delivery room, surrounded by trauma surgeons instead of the family members who had been waiting weeks to meet her. Jariah did not survive her injuries. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. She never saw her daughter's face. She never got to hold her. The version of her future that she had spent the final months of her life building toward. Motherhood, a fresh start, a daughter who would give her something to live for, ended in the same building where her daughter took her first breath. The baby was admitted to the neonatal intensive care unit in critical condition. According to the San Diego Police Department, doctors determined the newborn had suffered a severe hypoxic brain injury, meaning her brain had been deprived of oxygen long enough during the trauma of the shooting and emergency delivery to cause permanent, widespread cell damage. For days, the baby remained in the NICU while her family kept vigil, hoping for a recovery that medical staff were warning might not be possible. On June 7th, just over a week after the shooting that killed her mother, Jariah's daughter was removed from life support. She died never having had the chance to live in a world without this tragedy already woven into the beginning of her story. 2 lives, 1 bullet. A family planning 2 funerals instead of a baby shower. After the shooting, Williams ran. According to police, he fled the scene on foot, making his way into Tecolote Canyon, an open stretch of undeveloped land near the Bay Park neighborhood that offered cover and distance from the crime scene. Investigators say he changed clothes during this time, presumably trying to alter his appearance enough to avoid recognition if spotted. For a window of roughly 2 hours, Williams effectively vanished into terrain that San Diego officers know well. Tecolote Canyon is a popular hiking and nature reserve area, full of brush, ravines, and trails that can swallow a person moving quickly and quietly in the dark. It is the kind of place that can buy a fleeing suspect real time, and for a while, it did. It did not work for long. San Diego police officers, working off the description from the 911 calls and a perimeter search of the surrounding neighborhoods, tracked him down roughly 2 hours after the shooting, finding him hiding in a residential area about 1.5 miles from where Jariah had been shot. He had a semi-automatic handgun in his possession at the time of his arrest, a weapon investigators believe is connected to the shooting. According to reports, the firearm had been modified with an extended magazine, a configuration that is legal to own in Arizona but illegal in California, which became the basis for an additional weapons charge. He did not resist arrest. He was taken into custody without incident and booked into San Diego County Jail. Trevon Williams now faces a stack of serious felony charges in San Diego County Superior Court, including first-degree murder, attempted murder, and possession of a machine gun, a legal classification that, in California, can apply to a handgun fitted with an extended magazine like the one found in Williams's possession. Following the death of the baby on June 7th, prosecutors indicated they may amend the charges further, potentially adding a second murder count tied to the infant's death, since California law allows murder charges in cases where a fetus or newborn dies as a result of a violent act, separate from any charge tied to the mother. At his arraignment, cameras were permitted in the courtroom, but a judge ruled that Williams's face could not be shown on video. He pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. Deputy District Attorney Alex Lawrence did not soften the language used to describe the case to reporters outside the courthouse, calling it a tragic and heinous murder of a 17-year-old girl who was 32 weeks pregnant, carried out by her ex-boyfriend, in a relationship with a documented history of domestic violence. Williams is being held without bail. He withdrew a request for a bail hearing that had been scheduled, and his case proceeded toward a readiness conference and arraignment on the additional charges connected to the baby's death. Legal analysts who have spoken to local media about the case have suggested that prosecutors are unlikely to show leniency, given the facts as alleged, and some have raised the possibility that San Diego County could pursue the death penalty. Given the aggravating circumstances, an allegedly premeditated killing, the murder of a minor, the killing of a pregnant woman, and now potentially 2 homicide victims instead of 1. As of this telling, prosecutors have not confirmed publicly whether they intend to seek capital punishment, only that the case is legally eligible for it. Under California law, certain special circumstances can elevate a murder charge into a capital case, including murder that involves lying in wait for the victim and murder committed against more than one person. Both of those circumstances have been alleged, in substance, by prosecutors describing how Williams positioned himself outside the rental property before the shooting, and by the subsequent death of the newborn. Whether the district attorney's office ultimately files a formal notice seeking the death penalty is a decision that typically comes after additional review, and it is a decision that will shape the entire trajectory of the case, including how long it takes to reach trial and what kind of plea negotiations, if any, become possible. Perhaps the most painful detail to emerge from this case is the timing of Jariah's restraining order plans. She was not in denial about what was happening to her. She was not staying silent or hoping the problem would resolve itself. She had identified the danger, told people around her about it, and begun the legal process of formally separating herself from Williams in the eyes of the law. She was doing exactly what advocates tell people in abusive relationships to do. It did not happen fast enough. The paperwork that might have created a legal barrier between her and Williams was never filed, because the violence escalated before the process could be completed. This is one of the hardest realities of domestic violence intervention. Legal protections take time to process, and abusers who are determined to act often move faster than the systems designed to stop them. A restraining order is a piece of paper. It does not physically prevent someone from getting into a rideshare vehicle and crossing a state line. In the aftermath, Jariah's family launched a fundraiser to help cover funeral expenses and the medical costs associated with their newborn granddaughter's brief stay in the NICU. They described her publicly as a bright, loving young woman who had been preparing to welcome her first child and who was surrounded by people who cherished her. Her mother attended Williams's arraignment in person, sitting through a hearing that detailed, in clinical legal language, the final hours of her daughter's life. Family members have said that they intend to remember Jariah not just for how she died, but for who she was becoming in the months before her death, someone stepping fully into adulthood, motherhood, and her own sense of identity, all at once. That story was cut short twice. First for Jariah, and then, just over a week later, for the daughter she never got to meet. There is something particularly cruel about the timeline here that is worth naming directly. For days, this family existed in a kind of suspended grief, mourning a daughter while simultaneously holding on to hope for a granddaughter, splitting their attention between a funeral home and a hospital NICU. They had to process the worst loss imaginable while still showing up every day for a newborn whose survival was never guaranteed. A newborn who represented the only physical piece of Jariah still in the world. When that hope ended too, on June 7th, it did not arrive as a single tragedy. It arrived as the second half of one that had already been unfolding for more than a week, dragging the family through an extended period of anticipatory grief that few people are ever asked to endure. The legal process ahead will likely take months, if not longer. Capital cases and cases involving multiple homicide charges tend to move slowly through the courts, with extensive pretrial motions, evidentiary hearings, and scheduling delays that can stretch a case out for a year or more before it ever reaches a jury. For Jariah's family, that means the hearing they sat through in early June was very likely the first of many, each one requiring them to return to a courtroom and revisit the details of how their daughter and granddaughter died, long after the news cameras have moved on to other stories. If you or someone you love is in a relationship that feels controlling, frightening, or unsafe, help exists and it is available right now. The National Domestic Violence Hotline can be reached 24 hours a day. Jariah was 17. She was becoming exactly who she was supposed to be. Her daughter never got the chance to become anything at all. If this story stays with you, let it stay with you as a reason to check in on someone, to take a warning seriously, and to remember that the most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship is so often the moment someone finally decides to leave.